Hello everyone, and welcome to our next webinar here in AdventureJect. Today's topic is on longevity and VO2max, and we are very happy, as we also just stated in the comments, to see the great interest that there is in this topic. And yes, it is also extremely relevant to all of us and also to many in your professions, either as doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, or personal trainers. So we're very happy to see over 160 has signed up for this webinar. We are very happy to, in a moment, say welcome to Dr. Lutz Graumann, who has promised today to share with us some insights and also share with you some takeaways in all that he has learned and all that he is sharing around longevity. It's always interesting to hear and see where you are listening in from. So please do share in the comments below what country, what city you're listening in from. It's always very exciting for Lutz and I to see, to get a feeling for where are you guys and girls. And also, if there are any questions, either here on beforehand or once we get underway, Lutz and I will be monitoring the chat. So if any questions do pop up, do not hesitate to ask them. We will do our very best to see if we can answer them during the broadcast, or else we will answer them afterwards, either on an email directly to you who shared the question, or we will answer it for everybody in the comments here below, where you can also will have continued access to the video. And so if you have to jump off sometime during the webinar, the broadcast will be recorded and available at this URL right here, same place. And we will also take the recording and put it onto YouTube, a link that we will also be sharing with you. It will also be in our coming newsletter. So if you have colleagues that are not seeing this, with whom you would like to share it, or if you want to rewatch it, you can either see it on LinkedIn or on YouTube. So we really hope that that you can take as much as possible away from today's webinar. We are coming up close to 3 p.m. and we're very happy to be welcoming Dr. Lutz Graumann from Quest Vitality, an expert on longevity, which is also why we have invited him. So let's get Lutz. We will get him in now. See if everything works. Hello, Lutz.
Yep.
Good to see you.
Hello, Peter, and sunny greetings from Rosenheim, Germany, Bavaria.
Wow, Rosenheim. That is far south. That is
yes.
I hope you will share with us perhaps a little bit of Bavarian German during today's presentation. It is an extraordinary dialect.
Yes, and we are actually getting ready for the time of the year where we are actually limiting VO2max and health because of our fantastic Oktoberfest and Beer Fest seasons. Yeah.
Weirdly enough, Oktoberfest is in September.
Yep.
Thank you, Lutz, for joining us. We have people continuously logging in right now, so and we are monitoring the chat. So why don't we just get started? I'm Peter from VentureJect, the business development manager, so responsible for everything to do with sales. Lutz, will you introduce yourself?
Yep, more than happy. My name is Lutz. I'm a medical doctor from Rosenheim, Bavaria, Germany, and I've been a specialist for sports medicine for the last 20 years. And I had some sort of strange career because I actually started with the German military. And I had a scholarship from the German government, leading then into the German Bundeswehr. And I was fortunate enough to take over a role in the sports medicine sector in the German forces, which is the biggest sponsor for professional sports. And usually we are just coming out of the Paris Olympics, and half of the participants from Germany are officially sponsored by the German military. And the German military runs 13 different Olympic training sites throughout the country. And I was fortunate enough to have the sports medicine part under my supervision. And this is then how I basically came across all these different ways of assessing human performance, and obviously also on how to increase and optimize human performance. And that was my way over the last 15 years. And then in 2015, we founded Quest Vitality as a vehicle to take the learnings out of the world from professional sports, the world of the military, and then apply to a general population.
Fantastic. Very, very good to get that background story. Yep. Also because who knows if we will be drawing in a few parallels to where all of your insights and knowledge that you will share today come from. But to get started, and just to start by getting aligned, the topic today is about longevity. Could you just briefly get us all on the same page so that we have the same understanding, at least in this webinar, on what is longevity?
So this is basically the paradigm shift from just speaking about a lifespan, where we're happy to add years to the end of the lives, but without discussing the quality of life that we have over the last couple of years in our lives, which is that the quality of living is dramatically decreasing, and it basically puts up the question: is this life still worth living? And if we start to take a different approach and discuss the healthy aspects of aging, then we try to not only add years to the life, but also try to increase the health span. And there's an interesting analysis done by the Lancet journal from the UK, and they've been always discussing this problem of global burden of diseases. So we can expect to have a pretty asymptomatic health until we reach this threshold of 52 years of age. And then slowly the quality of life, the quality of health decreases. And then we end into this long pool of sickness. And this is something that we try to fight and battle. And there are like tons of experts around this planet that are now tapping into this unused potential of behavior change before we actually run into disease and symptoms.
Very good. It's not about, it's also, as we wrote in the commentary for this webinar, it's not it says with life as with a book. It's not about how long it is, but how good it is that matters.
Exactly. And this is then often where medicine really is not of no big help, because we only have an understanding of what sickness is at the one end of the spectrum and sickness is at the other end of the spectrum, but we are really struggling to quantify health. And this is something that we're going to put on the table today, because in the world of VO2max, we can actually give you a pretty good overview of where you really stand in regards to your peers. And this is a very interesting approach.
Fantastic. Lutz, I know you brought today a couple of slides, some insights from all your good work at Quest Vitality. So, so if I'm not mistaken, I would believe that the viewers out there are very curious to see also more than just you and I having a nice conversation.
Yeah, perfect. So let's try if I can take the slide deck and present it to you. Peter, I can't see the starting slide, but there we go. So for the last 20 years, we've been trying to get an understanding what are the contributing factors to health and performance and well-being. And this is what we call the vitality code. What are the biggest contributors to our performance levels? Which of these biomarkers have the most substantial impact? And this is still work in progress. Nobody has it really figured out yet. And every year there are new biomarkers coming on the scope, and then we have to evaluate what is really the help and the actionability of these biomarkers. We know that eventually we're all gonna die. And this is what the US colleagues call the 4 horsemen of death. So what will the Grim Reaper be presenting? We are probably the most afraid of cancer and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. But if we really do the math and look what is really going to kill the biggest part of the population, is probably heart disease by now, which is the prediction is probably 60% in the audience will die of a stroke or heart attack. But however, the onset of metabolic diseases such as type 2 diabetes is probably the biggest pandemic that we're battling in the upcoming decade. And there's a steady rise of metabolic disorders, and they all basically go hand in hand. And they could either lead to heart disease, they could lead to cancer, and they will also lead to neurodegenerative diseases. And this is why we have to pay some closer attention to some of these biomarkers. And today we're going to focus on the Grim Reaper of our heart. So the heart health is in the center, and this is also where VentureJect could help all the practitioners and the clinics out there, because we learned that most of the clientele that we deal with are really not using heart rate monitors for their everyday training. And then we don't really have to do lab diagnostics to come up with training recommendations if they don't use a heart rate monitor in the first place. So even if we look at heart health and the contributing factors to what can we learn, what do we need to learn around the heart, is this more like puzzle pieces where we still figure quite an unknown, where we don't really have figured out yet how they fall into place. But overall, we have a pretty good understanding of what do we need to look at in order to then come up with actionable recommendations of what can you do in order to not die of something stupid or something that could have been preventable. And this is also something when we discuss longevity is that was published in National Geographic. So Dan Buettner is a science journalist who basically traveled the planet and realized that in some regions of the world, there is an odd ratio of centenarians, so people who are still healthy when they turn 100. And these blue zones thinking was something that has been pretty popular over the last 5 to 10 years. And we'll see that these are regions scattered throughout the planet, and there is no real common denominator. So the only thing that we know is whether we are plant-based or whether we are omnivores, we can make it to 100. None of these centenarians are really keen on doing sports. What we know is that there is a correlation that there has to be movement involved, and there has to be strenuous movement involved in order to keep up the cardiovascular capacity. And so in Sardinia, in Okinawa, in Ikaria, we have this weird thing that we have really tiny narrow roads, villages up on the mountains, and where the old folks have to constantly go up and down. They have tiny houses, but with multiple stories. So taking stairs and being able to take stairs is something that is an evolutionary advantages for them. But they all drink alcohol, They don't have a vegetarian or a vegan diet. So it's not as simple as this, boiling it down to diet or movement. And when we speak about the data that need to be collected, we have this massive information asymmetry between machines and men. So if we take a look at the sport that is probably analyzed the best, it's Formula One racing. So in a car, we have 300 built-in sensors for every training session that they do. They collect tons of data. But when we look at then the human operator, it's actually kind of depressing that we're still looking just as EKG, heart rate data about respiration, and weight data. And that was the same thing what I did for the German military. I came up with a program called Human Performance Enhancement Project for the fighter pilots of the Eurofighter Typhoon, which is a plane which was at the time the fastest fighter plane on the planet, and most of the European countries bought into that, and most of the Arabic world also bought these planes. And the one thing that happened when the fighter pilots tried to take a turn with Mach 2, so 2 times the speed of sound, they became unconscious because they struggled with the G forces. And if you are not at the best of your shape, the blood will be pushed away from your brain and you will end up being unconscious, which is not the best place to be in. And so we had to come up with also collecting data around the human operators and understand them even better. And every time you go into your cars right now, you sit down, you turn the ignition or you press the start button, you get informed about all the most important statuses of the engine, of the seatbelt, of the light, and you pretty much know whether you're safe to just get going. But when we speak about our patient's life, there's also this big gap of information asymmetry. So when a patient wakes up in the morning, they don't have a clue what their blood sugar level is or how the blood sugar levels evolve throughout the day if they're not using a CGM device. And what about the blood pressure? So most of the really vital information is not presented to the individual, and it doesn't help him to come up with data-driven recommendations for lifestyle changes. And this is something that we actually like to change. And this is called what we call try to measure what really matters. And this is also something that we did with the German Ice Hockey Federation, where I've been a chief medical officer for 5 years. So really try to understand what do we need to look at in the first place to have the biggest impact on the outcome and the performance. And when we look about heart health, obviously, it doesn't make sense to start with VO2max right at the beginning because VO2max won't kill you instantly. But the stuff that will kill you instantly, and you will die of something stupid if you don't pay attention to your blood pressure. If you have a hereditary disease where your blood makeup is changed and you have an overly amount of blood lipids in the circulation that could form clots, that could build up plaques at the vessel walls, in the combination with inflammation, that will probably kill you eventually. And that will be actually the opposite of longevity. But already at a really good 4th place, we actually want to give you feedback on where do you stand as an individual in regards to the others. And then if we know that where you stand, we can then come up with informed decisions when we look at your heart rate, your heart rate variability, but also how quickly do you bounce back from strenuous exercises. Then we can give you personalized, tailored recommendations of what you want to do starting today to end up at a better place for tomorrow. Because the good thing is, most of these key vitality indicators are pretty much reversible. So for every marker that we put on this list, we have a list of action items where we can improve these numbers. And the moment we improve these numbers, it is very likely that we improve your quality of living, and we will have these baby steps in the right direction in regards to longevity. And then we also have some funny other aspects that we can discuss is that grip strength and the status of our musculoskeletal system also correlates with your major adverse cardiac events. So the higher your grip strength, the less likely it'll be that in the next 10 years you will die of a heart attack or a stroke. And also genomic tests that look into your genetic makeup could give us ideas of what you want to do, and something that will probably does not make sense for you to look at this. The only problem with genomic tests at this stage is that it's only about statistical likelihood, because we never really know whether the one gene that we have learned from is actually switched on or off. And this is something that hopefully in the future, the epigenetic tests will take care of, that the combination with your DNA results in regards to also the epigenetic markers, we can then even have a better understanding of what you want to do in the future starting today, so that we actually can optimize longevity. But we're not there yet. But when we look at the stuff that we've been doing in the last 15 years, looking at VO2 max data, we mostly collected the data either on a treadmill or on a bike, because we thought we could educate the population that everybody needs a heart rate monitor, whether it's a chest belt or one of these optical devices in your smartwatch. And then we can give them a training protocol, and then we will change the health on the planet. But the depressing truth is that was not happening. So we had some of the best experts on the planet in our team. We had psychologists, but it's really hard to change people's movement behavior, because if you hate running or if you hate cycling, that's never going to happen. No, and also, if you look,
you said before strenuous, right? That was the secret behind those the longevity in those 5 areas across the world. And strenuous is just not nice.
Strenuous sucks. And it's, to be honest, if we really want to improve VO2 max, which we're going to do in a little while, it's blood, sweat, and tears. And if you're not willing to invest
a lot of sweat,
then it's never going to work. But even with the detailed training recommendations, we weren't able to tap into the value system and the belief system of our clients. So initially, every client that came and see us did a lactic spirometry on a treadmill or a bike, and we had perfectly scientific, 100% dummy-proof recommendations, but people weren't doing it. So this is then why we decided, well, there have to be better ways of doing this while still having the upside of showing our clientele where they really stand. And this is then when I ran into VentureJect and your device. And I really loved this idea that there is a pretty accurate way of giving the individual a feedback for one of these key vitality indicators when we discuss longevity.
And coming back to those KVIs from the key vitality indicators from your past slide, just to everyone out there, Lutz has promised to share this presentation. So if you did not capture all those key vitality indicators, we will be more than happy to share with you the presentation. So if you want the slides, just write yes down below in the comment section. And I will be sure to get it to you either via email or a message here on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So when we look at the way we discuss the future of medicine, a colleague of ours from the US, Dr. Jeffrey Bland, came up with this concept of 4P medicine. 4 capital Ps will basically determine your health span in the future. The first one is participation. Are you actually willing to play an active role in your health? Or do you just want to be a spectator and you expect from all the practitioners that you go to that they will make you healthy? And if you're not willing, you can already step out of this game. Then it's our job to get to know you a little bit better in order to come up with personalized recommendations of what could potentially be working for you. There's no 100% guarantee that the first approach will work, but obviously we are happy with baby steps in the right direction. And if you're willing to participate, and now the tough part, if you are willing to avoid the stupid things in your life that you're still constantly doing, then we might be able to prevent the one or the other adverse outcome. And this is the holy grail. And with the data that we collect today, we can predict the outcome. And this is something that Ventreject is really good at, because we already have a pretty good understanding about the decline of VO2max as we age. So from the textbooks in exercise physiology, from the textbooks in cardiology, you can pretty much create a forecast of how the trajectory will evolve as you age. So if you're starting off in a really good place, you were an athlete in your youth, you were a track and field athlete, a cross-country skier, or whatever you were good at, once you have built up cardiovascular capacity, that is something that will be a game changer throughout your whole life. And this is something that is pretty constant. So you lose your cardiovascular capacity really slowly. So this is the degradation over age. But if you have never really built up the capacity, you might struggle as you age, because we know, based on these numbers, that if you never really made it over a threshold of 45, you will have a tough time making it three flights of stairs up the moment you turn 50, or you will be huffing and puffing like an old steam train. Yes, and we have these good predictors if you want to run 6 miles per hour, so a little bit more than 10K. You have to have a capacity of more than 35 in the beginning. And then it is becoming more likely that you can also use this potential once you've turned 55. And the good news is you can really conserve this cardiovascular capacity. And from our learnings in the German military, we could basically guarantee you, once you build up your capacity around the age of 40, you can be age 40 from a cardiovascular capacity standpoint for more than 25 years. If you look at the big result statistics of the big marathon races around the world, we'll see that half of the participants age 65 who make it past the finish line will beat most of the 35 years old. So there's a big number of 60 years old that will still beat the crap out of the younger ones, because they started early on to build the capacity, and they protect their health, and they have an evolutionary advantage.
Yeah, I recognize that from many of the races that I participated in, just running in half a marathon or a whole marathon. It's like, I've been beaten many times by people with gray hair or no hair.
Even no hair. Yep. And this is something that we can predict. So if you really want to make it in old age and enjoy living in a multi-story flat, you have to build up capacity. There's no way around it. And one of my favorite clients I've ever seen is somebody who presented himself at the first Ventreject diagnostic with a VO2max of 37.6. You could probably say that this is not super exciting, but if we put this into perspective, this gentleman reached out to me after seeing us in a documentary in German television around longevity, and he said he wanted to test his biological age as well at our facility. And then when we learned about this gentleman, we realized, hey, wait a minute, this guy is 84 years of age. So this is just like a blue zone experiment. We need to figure out, what did this gentleman do differently than all the other seniors that we're seeing every day out there in the streets, huffing and puffing and just going from one bench to the other. And this gentleman is 84 years old, cycles 10,000 kilometers with his bike every year. And only for the last 5 years, he's been using an e-bike to help him going up and down the mountains. So in this daily routine of cycling anywhere from 35 to 60 kilometers, protects his strength. So when we compare his strength output to all the others, he still has the muscular capacity of a 35-year-old. And only his metabolism, with the blood samples that we look and the body fat that we look into, he's only 25 years younger than his biological age. This gentleman only has a body fat percentage of 80.2% age 84, which is unheard of. And these are these cool subjects that we have to understand better. What is their genetic makeup? Is it only the good genes, or what are the choices in his lifestyle that he does on a day-to-day basis that we can take, digest, and hand it out to our other clients? And from the senior citizens that we have analyzed in the last couple of years, this is basically my top 5 recommendations for the audience out there. So you really want to make sure that you prioritize sleep and recovery. And if you want to make it to 100, there's no way around 7.5 hours of sleep, because we need deep sleep for the physical restoration, as well as REM sleep, dream sleep for the psychological restoration. It only works the moment we embrace this concept of hydration management. So we need to drink water to quench our thirst, and not Red Bull, no Coke, and only for the pure enjoyment and indulgence of life. We can allow ourselves a glass of beer, a glass of wine at the end of the day. But when we speak about hydration management, is liquids without any calories, ideally water or unsweetened tea or unsweetened coffee. And it has to do with movement. If you look at World Health Organization, the recommendations is out there at 150 minutes of movement, whatever movement you like, whether it's gardening, it has to be of a certain metabolic equivalent. But if you don't really invest more than 20 minutes into your day, you're lost, guaranteed.
So the 150 minutes, just to get it clear,
per week.
Is per week, yes.
It's per week. But if you boil it down, it's 20 minutes per day, a little bit more than 20 minutes. It's nothing. And I haven't seen an individual that really protected his VO2max with just 20 minutes of daily movement. This is insane what the WHO says there.
So you consider that an absolute
minimum.
Bare minimum?
The absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
And I would add to these recommendations of WHO that we also need to invest this one session per week where we go all out. So we need to trigger the blood pressure response, the cardiovascular response, so that we're still adapting to our environment. And we can still adapt and train, and we have trainability even age 75, age 80. We can still get better, but the baby steps will actually become shorter. And the older we get, we want to make sure that we have some sort of strength training or strenuous gardening or manual labor, where we then also protect the myokines, which also is an information pathway for the brain and also for the rest of the body. And you can really figure out, just like VO2max with the VentuJect, you can use a very simple grim strength machine to see what is your starting point when we speak about musculoskeletal strength. And once we've embraced this and we got this idea that less stupid mistakes is more correlating with higher health span, then we're probably ending up in a good place. And for the ones who want to share their healthy behavior with us, just be our guest. You can take the QR code and participate in our Vitality Baseline project, where we ask you about what is the behaviors that you do on a day-to-day basis. And whether you already know your VO2 max, then we are more than happy to republish these results every quarter on LinkedIn. So, and that basically brings me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lutz. We will be sharing the link to Quest Vitality and the Vitality code down in the comment section below. Just really briefly, I know we have over time, but there is one question from Robert, and he asks, how often is best for the strength training?
So depending on where you start, you can do some sort of simple strength training every day. And I do a very simple movement routine every day, and I finish it off with some pull-ups in my garden. And it's been helping so far, and it has decreased the frequency of neck pain and shoulder pain substantially. You don't want to overdo it. The moment you have muscle soreness, you probably want to wait a day or two before you do the next burst. It is all depending on the level of intensity. You could do something 6 times a week, and some of the strenuous exercises you just want to do once or twice a week.
Thank you for sharing that, Lutz. We are out of time. I just want to thank you very much for being with us today and for sharing everything that you've learned and the 5 relatively easy takeaways. So thank you very much, Lutz, and everybody who's been listening. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and do follow in the comment section below, or reach out to either Lutz or I if there is anything more you feel you want to need, or look for sources or inspiration further. Thank you very much. I wish you
Thanks for your time.
a good day.
And have a fantastic Oktoberfest season.
Yes, sounds good. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.